All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It's a little after 2:10, but I think again, opportunity for more folks to pop in, which has been great. So first, I just want to welcome everyone here today to our open workshop. This is GenAI Security Open Workshop. I see some familiar faces from this morning when we had our RSA Summit session, so it's great to see folks continuing our conversation today. So we're really looking at a whole set of opportunities this afternoon to chat about more around our securing our agentic security. I'll talk a little bit about me. So for those who weren't there this morning, my name is Scott Clinton. I co-chair the GenAI Security Project. We've been working on this little project since almost 2.5, almost 3 years. And I work not only as a co-chair, but I also manage a couple of the different work streams. So both in terms of the solutions landscapes that we do, as well as we recently released our data security guidance, so our updated data security guidance. So we've got a lot of our project initiative leaders here today, so you're going to hear from them. We also have a great thing that we kicked off as part of our Agentic Top 10 that we launched back in December in London. We kicked off an initiative, or basically an initiative attached to that, to help people understand how they are deploying and how they are adopting the Agentic Top 10. So we'll hear from from Postman today about how they're applying that in their world. We had a competition. We had somewhere between 25 and 30 submissions about people, how they're taking that. And so it will be great to kind of hear today about that. So why don't I go ahead and just keep us going. Also, after our sessions today, we will have a networking kind of party. So we'll have a part where the place we're at is the Digital Jungle, which is a great place for us to kind of do this outside of RSA. And so we'll have a little party at the Jungle after we're done here today, after we're done with the hackathon. So feel free to stay through. And the hackathon will actually continue on. So if you want to keep hacking during the party, we're not going to stop you. So that's what we have on offer for today. So I'll get started here real quickly. Some of you may have seen some of this morning, but I wanted to do just another quick update about the project, those who may or may not be familiar with everything that the project is doing. As OWASP, we are the OWASP GenAI Security Project, so we're a project within the OWASP Foundation. We're a little unique in our project because we become effectively a project of projects, specifically focused on generative AI security. Part of the reason for that is we believe that there's a lot of connectedness between what we need to do to address generative AI security challenges, and by having the group come together to focus on these different areas, we can start to connect the challenges across the board. Now, we started out as a simple top 10 list for LLMs back in 2023. Boy, okay. And we kind of grew over 2024 and last year to really expand that, to bring new work streams in as well. Today, we have kind of grown significantly. To us, it's been surprising about the growth. We thought this was an interesting question. We got a lot of answers, and we've got a lot of people who've jumped into the pool to help answer them. So one of the propositions we thought about early on was, well, how do you address AI security? It's moving so fast. How do we keep up? And so as a project, we took the approach that we really just want to provide the information practitioner to practitioner that we have now, and then focus on iterating that. So it's always going to be changing, and so in order for us to keep up, again, kind of takes a village. It's a little overused term, but I think for us, in order to really keep up with the pace of what AI is moving toward, we need to work on it as a community of practitioners together and bring that to everyone to work. Now, we all use a little AI in our day, so there's a little bit of acceleration there, but I think in order for us to really do this, they have to do it as a group. So our expert practitioners have grown. We've really focused the project on becoming an expert group versus one document or another. And I think that's really helped us be able to respond. And I know there are a number of contributors here that are in the room. So again, always want to thank everybody for their individual contributions. We're all volunteers in this effort, so that makes it even more impressive, at least to me, for the time people are investing to kind of help solve the problems. And by taking that fast iteration approach, that allows us to kind of take the problems you guys are addressing, we're addressing as security practitioners today, and find problems to them that we can start to deploy. Well, not immediately, but as close to immediately as we can get to. So we continue to see that growth. The other part of this has been this broad adoption and collaboration with industry bodies. So early work we did with MITRE around helping build the framework around Atlas, contributing to that. The partnerships we have now have in place with some of the other standards groups. We have contributions from NIST. If you were on our panel earlier today, Abistol was here, and he was actually talking about it. He's one of the folks from NIST who contributes regularly to the project. And then we have our partnerships, obviously, and collaborations with the European Union Institute, our fellow colleague who co-chairs the Agentic Security Initiative, along with Ron, and you'll see some of the core team a little bit later today in our panel discussion, was just at NATO doing a presentation around a lot of the things that we're doing for the project as part of that. So that's why he wasn't able to be here this year. So it's been tremendous, sort of the pickup and engagement we've seen. The community's been really productive. We produced just last year almost 50 documents. It's 49 plus, because there's some translations in here. We've got 19 localized documents, so we're really trying to make sure the things that are being published are accessible everywhere. And it's not just about the top 10, it's about connecting across those. I'm often asked about adoption. So just because we're publishing things doesn't mean they're getting adopted. But when we looked back at 2025, we are averaging even today about 1,500 downloads a day, which to me is just amazing. And it's happening not just with one document, it's happening across a series of resources. So it's great that those are being picked up and leveraged. And we've had almost 500,000 downloads last year across all of our projects throughout the year. So that's been tremendous. I always want to take a moment to thank also our sponsors, and I want to be careful. I mean, what we do from sponsorship perspective is, our sponsors are critical to help us fund things that we do, fund the operations of the project. They fund our website. They fund our ability to pay for tokens. So as you might notice, we have a working group that's focusing on threat research, and it doesn't come for free. The ability to kind of do this research and do this testing, tokens cost a lot, as we all know. And so this gives us an opportunity to help fund those efforts so we can do things at scale, as opposed to sandbox type projects. And so that's another piece of this. And I also want to welcome our new sponsors. So we have some new sponsors that have joined us this year as we continue to grow as a community and help support us there. We are, though, as a community, a little bit different. We are a grassroots community. So sponsors, just to be clear, don't have any governance or influence on what we do. They're there to help, contribute to helping us all be successful. This is all driven by the community, by volunteers, and their collaboration. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and bring up Tomer and Vineeth to help us start talking about our first session, which is really diving into MCP security.
Cool. Thank you for the introduction. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, my name is Vineeth. I've been contributing to the OWASP GenAI project for about a year and a half now, my second RSA here. Super excited to be here. I currently work at Cisco as an AI security researcher. I worked with Idan, who could not be here, unfortunately, Tomer and Joshua Beck. Super excited to talk to you guys, and off to you, Tomer.
So it's nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Tomer. I'm the CEO of a stealth startup. I'm with OWASP the past year, joined on our previous version of securing agentic applications. And now leading, together with Idan that couldn't be here, our cheat sheets initiatives. And before we start talking about what we have for today, I'm gonna ask you, who here actually developed MCP within the organizations or for internal use? Anyone here with the raise of a hand? Okay. And any of you adopted an MCP, like downloaded an MCP from anywhere and used it? Oh, okay. And from those that downloaded an MCP, how many of you used a scanner to check whether your MCP is malicious? Okay, perfect. So
Not a one-to-one match. I hope it
Yeah.
becomes a one-to-one match soon.
So let's talk about the agenda for today. We are going to talk about the MCP threat model and why we actually decided to release two separate MCP cheat sheets. One about using third-party MCPs, another one about securely developing your MCP for your organization. And we are going to also announce how you can contribute to the V2 of securing agentic applications. So let's start with the threat model.
Yeah. So before we get started, I just want to give a quick, MCP in a nutshell. So Anthropic released MCP, I guess, a year and a half ago. I think a year and a half ago. And before then, all of our LLM interactions were in a chatbot. We didn't have a way to interact with the real world. With the launch of MCP, there was a standardized, easy way for LLMs to talk to the real world. So in the protocol, you have three major parts. You have your host, your client, and your servers. An MCP server can have one or many tools. One or many servers can connect to your client, and you can have multiple clients on a host. Just for context, before we get deeper into the securing part of the MCP. MCPs, you can think of it as a wrapper for your APIs or your databases or any other tool you might have. They can be local, they can be remote. Here we have an example of one talking to a third-party service, which is a database, and other APIs. Cool. So why does MCP security matter, right? So it's like asking, why does API security matter? For APIs, we use deterministic ways to call APIs. We use curl, wget. But when non-deterministic entities like LLMs call APIs, they might not form them correctly. So the MCP is a translation layer from LLMs to APIs. So MCP turns APIs from chatbots into agents. Everyone says we're in the agentic world, and MCP is the one that brought us to the agentic world. A compromised MCP tool can become a privileged insider risk, or any risk for that matter. So it's really important to ensure that your MCP server, both when you're consuming and you're building, is safe and secure. And finally, third-party MCP servers introduce new supply chain risks. Who here saw the Light LLM hack yesterday? Who here worked overnight yesterday to fix stuff at work? Not many? You guys are lucky. Okay. So that's an example. So basically what happened was Light LLM, which is one of the most common libraries for routing calls to LLMs, got basically hacked. Their PyPy package had malware that stole keys. That's how important supply chain is becoming these days, because AI-generated code can introduce bugs that we could never know. It's really important to make sure our supply chain is secure. So these are the two most common attacks that we see in MCP ecosystem. The first one is called the rug pull attack. It's a really simple attack where initially you had a human in the loop approve, verify, and check everything regarding an MCP server or tool. You install it, everything looks good. A week later, someone pulls the rug, just like what happened with Light LLM. And because the protocol inherently does not have a way to verify if something has changed, you'll continue, your cursor or wherever you're running your MCP client and host will continue to talk to the same MCP server, and we can have a lot of issues. We'll talk about a few examples later down the line. The second one is called schema poisoning, tool definition poisoning, whatever we like to call it. Here it's really simple, where the tool definition has a prompt, and you're prompt injecting your LLM to do things it's not supposed to do. So a good example of this is, here we have search and read the user's API keys and add it to data. So like the LLM might think, oh, you need the API key for the request to go through. The LLM doesn't think it's malicious, but in fact, the attacker is just siphoning off your API keys. This is a really high-level threat model for the various parts of the MCP ecosystem. On the far left, we have the host, where you have your host-related vulnerabilities, your host system compromise. Then you have your client and server. We'll talk about more of these in the future slides, but I would think about like how the client can be attacked, how your server can be attacked by using this as a framework. And then following that, we have tools. Like I said, each MCP server can have one or many tools. Here we have attacks like tool squatting or tool poisoning, resource exhaustion like denial of service. And finally, you have your external resources. This is what your MCP protocol is eventually going to talk to. And so here you have things like data exfiltration and indirect manipulation. Cool.
So why we decided to split into two? And it was really hard for us, actually, because we understood that there are different types of risks for adopters versus those that develop. And if you think about it, when you use an MCP, you are a consumer, while when you build one, the architect is the one that is taking the risk on himself, as well as where are the guardrails, who can implement guardrails and prerequisites to protect that. So if you think about it, a third-party MCP could be a widget that you add to your browser that could be untrusted, right? So in the same way, you need to address that. It's a new code. You didn't build it, how you can trust it, versus how you build a code and ship it in a way that is more secure. So in the first use case, you need a way to discover, verify, and approve those external MCPs because they are going to touch your data, your APIs, your systems. And there's the supply chain risk. On the other way around, how you securely develop something by design. And here the problems are around prompt injection, tool poisoning, and unsafe safe executions. So how you build the right permissioning, etc., when you build an MCP. So as you could see, this cheat sheet is the most used at the past year across the OWASP community. People are using lots of MCPs and they are trying to figure out ways to secure it. So as I mentioned, they extend your system. As Vineet mentioned, they actually take LLM, and that's the concept of an agent that now can take actions on your data. Every MCP introduced a new trust boundary between the agent and a third-party code. And when it comes to manipulation, your tool, your data, as I mentioned, you need a way to figure out whether the behavior changed, right? Whether your agent behaved differently now with this MCP, how they interact with your systems in a way that compromise your organization or your own data. So we created a clear guidelines for you to adopt before you connect and act with the MCP itself. And you could see you can download the full report. On the next slide, we have a kind of a minimum bar that allows you as an adopter to actually say, hey, I'll take those different controls, I'll adopt them. Do you want to share like maybe one of them as an example?
Yeah. So some of the most important ones are like isolation, making sure that like, hey, even if something does happen, it's not impacting the rest of my system. And so a lot of these might come from traditional security practices, but it's important to also recognize that a lot of those controls might not be fully capable today because of the new type of threats we're seeing. Some of the other ones is human in the loop. A lot of the times, without a human in the loop, it's possible your LLM might take dangerous actions. Who's seen Replit deleting an entire production database a month ago? So Replit was one of the coding agents, deleted an entire startup database, and when the startup founder asks why, he's like, oh, my mistake, I'm sorry. And so it's possible, like, without a good human in the loop, you can have really devastating consequences.
Yeah, just a quick comment. We created those MCP guides before CLI became a thing. So we may just publish maybe a blog post or an update on that also later on.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. So I know it says the answer here, but do you guys see what the issue is in the slide? Right? It's a really simple attack where you have this is from researchers called Coy, where they had a malicious MCP, where they found a malicious MCP server, which is basically like an email server. So you can send emails using your LLM. You just talk to your LLM, will send out an email. And they inserted a BCC, so every email you sent would silently be sent to that email address. And the attacker were able to exfiltrate like sensitive information, secrets, whatever they could from emails. So really simple attacks, really large consequences. In the beginning of the talk, we spoke about how many of you scan your MCP. There's a ton of MCP scanners. Please, if you're using it, scan your MCPs. Or make sure you're getting the official one, and make sure you're following the minimum bar. So even if something did go wrong, it doesn't, the blast radius is contained. Things to do are making sure you automate review of tool manifests and metadata, making sure the tool manifest or tool description doesn't change, so you're not getting rug pulled. Check if you have any suspicious descriptions, prompt injection, really simple ones make sure to send passwords or something like that. If you are building them, make sure you have a good CI/CD, and if you're at an enterprise, have some kind of MCP registry internally, so everyone in your company downloads them from the official source, rather than, back in the day we used to just curl anything. So we don't do that now. Finally, making sure your findings, you're storing them, you're tracking them, and over time you are using some sort of risk methodology method to mitigate those findings.
Okay, second cheat sheet is how to develop MCP more securely. As I mentioned, there are extension layer of your agents. Security flows in developing that may affect your overall systems. So how you actually define the right guidelines for developers while building MCPs more securely, how you embed those architectures from the get-go, and how you make sure the fact that inputs and the kind of execution risks are low. So we have some kind of examples. Again, another minimum bar that we created that allows you to decide, understand. So identity is one of them, and we spoke here with some of the folks, joiners, about agent identity and what are the problems that we have today with that. Another example is how you kind of isolate it, right? The zero shared state. Do you want to share anything?
Yeah, so the one thing I want to share in this one is, without getting too much into the water, agentic identities are a scary topic. None of us have figured it out.
It's not an AGI.
Yeah. So the couple things here I really look for is cryptographically signing and version pinning your MCP tool definitions, tool manifests. Again, going back to the light LM, because I didn't sleep last night, is making sure you don't use greater than equal to, making sure you're pinning it to an actual version you've tested. And yeah, making sure you follow strict schema, so if something did go wrong, you'll catch it quicker.
Next slide, we don't have those.
Okay.
So we'll share with you the next slides, on the download option. But I see that also we don't have the updated version. So if you want to contribute, maybe we'll go to questions.
Yeah.
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 So
do you guys have any questions for us?
Yeah. Anything around MCPs, future of MCP? Yeah.
So there's one thing I don't understand. Why in the MCP server world, why there's no such thing as we have official MCP server, but we don't have authoritative MCP. Why the standard does not include something that says GitHub, if someone wanted to discover, use a GitHub. Hello? Testing? Okay. So yeah, there's one thing I don't quite understand, right? So we have this notion about official MCP server, but we do not have a certificate pinned, verifiable, authoritative MCP. I would imagine this should be something like an MX record for email server. If I want to send email to GitHub, I don't just send to a third-party SMTP relay. right? That's part of phishing detection. So in MCP, I should have another record in my DNS say, here's my official MCP server for whatever.com. Why that is not the case?
Yeah, I mean, you should talk to Anthropic, or like some neutral third party that can host it. There's a protocol that OWASP helped put out called Agent Name Service last year that relies on like DNS. It's called Agent Names, like the name. Basically, we use the PKI and everything you just spoke about to like make sure we like anyone can find the official MCP server based on their DNS records, like you said. It's a difficult hill to climb because you have to get the whole ecosystem to like agree to something, and it's going to take some time. I know there's an IETF draft going out that's happening in the next IETF meeting about just happened or about to happen. So things are slowly moving there, but I don't know. I can't speak for Anthropic or the Linux Foundation.
Yeah, but generally, it's the same question about who attestate and who kind of is the right authority to take ownership on that. You could see GoDaddy, for example, implementing the ANS as an example, and you could see some kind of companies trying to build repositories that are more vetted, like Vercel, for example. But yet, it's not like a regulatory situation, right? It's more political and like between kind of business and companies, not yet something that is.
And that's why really in enterprise environments, you can have your private registry, and you can force all downloads to go through a private registry, so it makes it easier for enterprise environments.
Yep.
I know that you guys were looking at or there was a demo of the MCP scanner. To what extent can since tokens are free today, to what extent have you guys looked at taking the OWASP PDF, creating a skill, and then telling Anthropic or telling Claude, act as a scanner, use this skill? Have you tried that at all?
Yes, the scanner you saw is in Claude plugin, so you could use skills and ask Claude to like do it for you. But a lot of times in production workflows where you're running them in GitHub runners or like some kind of on-demand servers, you might not have the entire setup. So yes, but also like some of the scanner parts are deterministic in nature. Not everything relies on LLMs. So having a good mixture of deterministic scanning and both like LLM as a judge or like LLM native scanning is important. So it's a good mixture of both. But as you said, there are scanners that do that, and they exist in the marketplace. I know Mint MCP has one, Cisco has one. There's a few, Sneak has one. So there's few of them out there.
Thank you. Second question, as it relates to CLI, to what extent is it valuable to do new namespaces for CLI output for MCP?
Like ANS?
Like
talking about like
the
a
Linux
name
namespace.
Sorry?
The Linux namespace.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe take us later. Another question? Okay, so we are excited to kick off our V2 for securing agentic applications guide. It's something that we wrote a year ago. So I believe there's a lot to update here. We are calling you, the community, to join us. You could see here on the next slide how you actually join. And I also had a slide with a nice kind of QR code, but it's not updated. Sorry for that. But if you join OWASP community on Slack, you can Google it, how to join OWASP community on Slack. You just join our team, and you can start contributing, being part of the amazing organization that's written all those guides. Your name will be there. We're gonna see you. Happy to partner with you on that.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Karen Katz. I'm OWASP lead for Top 10 for Agentic AI applications. And I'm really excited to announce our winners in the Adoption Challenge for the Agentic Top 10. So you probably know that in OWASP, we're not only publishing documents, but we want them to come to life. So earlier this morning, Ron from Intuit presented how Intuit took the top 10 and actually put that into life, into their security operations. Today, here, we got with us Postman. So I'm happy to invite Ashley and Kyle to speak up and to share how they implemented the Agentic Top 10 in Postman security operations.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. I'm Kyle Devakumaran. You can call me Kyle. I'm a security engineer with Postman. Pretty excited to be here with you all today. This is my first time speaking at OWASP, and looking forward to learning with you. Before we get started, I would like to thank the OWASP community for providing us with this opportunity, so where we can share our journey about how we utilized the OWASP Agentic framework in building and securing our agent-based system at Postman. The disclaimer, the original speaker who was supposed to be here couldn't travel due to the ongoing conflict, so I'm just filling in his shoes. In a nutshell, like what I wanted to share is how agents have evolved. Just give me a second. Do you want to? Yeah.
Okay. So we have an update to the slide, so give me just a second here.
Yeah. Oh, this is the.
So, yeah. Give us just a second here. This is how you know it's live, real. That was a consolidated one.
Yeah.
Did you add it into that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it was updated at 2 today. That's why. There we go. Let me see if this one is the right one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we got the right one now. Great. One more time.
Sorry about that. So the core idea I wanted to share here today is as AI systems have evolved from just generating tasks to actually taking actions, the security model has fundamentally changed like how we approach the problem. So, and that's exactly the journey we went through. Let's talk about the evolution of AI at Postman. We introduced Postbot back in 2023. Think of it as like an AI chatbot where you basically ask it a bunch of questions and it'll respond you with a bunch of text. It was more focused on specializing in individual tasks. So think of it like you're asking it to generate some documentation, providing you with some scripts, or providing you with some instructions of what actions to follow. Fast forward, we introduced agent mode back in 2025. This fundamentally shifted like how we saw the agentic evolution. So instead of just executing certain tasks, the agent can now perform end-to-end workflow on your behalf. So think of it like Postbot was a helpful tool, whereas agent mode, it became as an intelligent teammate who can perform actions on your behalf. And with that, like agent mode is more of like, think of it like a multi-agent orchestrator. So within Postman, we have like different agents to solve different problems. For example, we have an onboarding agent. So a new user joins Postman, it can help you guide, okay, what are the new features, like how to move around or navigate through Postman. And another example would be an API development or like a generalist agent, which is basically, you can ask the agent to create an API workflow for you. It can create like test cases, update your administrative configurations, provide documentation, build your test suites, things like that. So end-to-end workflow, the AI agent can help. So the evolution started with just like providing you with some response, but now it can actually go ahead and perform the entire workflow for you. And how the security program within Postman evolved is what we're going to focus here. Like any other traditional security program, we also have like follow the process of threat modeling, architecture reviews, testing, risk assessment, and things like that. With Postbot, everything was working fine because in a nutshell, it was like any other traditional system. You think of it, it doesn't have agentic capabilities. It was just providing you with like the knowledge base with what it was like trained on. And with agent mode, it completely changed the architecture or how we view the system. It had like tool execution, like memory, context, and everything. So how do we handle those scenarios? And that's where like OWASP Agentic Top 10 framework really helped us to like map like how our agents are working with the actual real world scenarios. And we'll go into details about how we tackle like all these test cases. Let me start with like how we approach a threat modeling problem. With Postbot, it was mostly like a classifier-based architecture. What I meant is like we had a fine-tuned model which was trained on synthetic data and basically to identify what was the user intent so that you can provide you a context of like what the user is asking. With this, like we were really focused on classifier risk or like training data, and also like we were also mostly focused on AI-driven lifecycle risks, things like data collection, training, pipeline, and things like that. But as the system evolved into an agent-based system, it kind of like shifted our view of like, okay, so now what are we trying to solve? Are we gonna like look into how our models are being trained? No, like we need to look into how our agents are behaving at runtime. Are they able to execute tasks? How are they able to reason and plan those actions? So that fundamentally changed like how we approach, and the OWASP Agentic Top 10 like really helped us like put into context of like this known risk at the runtime. So for example, like things like goal hijacks, tool misuse, memory poisoning, interagent risks. So those were completely missed in our initial threat modeling because we were going with the original mindset. But this actually helped us to like move our model-based threat modeling into more of like a runtime-based behavior threat modeling. So that's the approach we took away from here. And let's move on to like how we approach architecture reviews. Now with like threat modeling done, right? Like how do we approach architecture reviews? So Our agent mode is considered of like a root agent. Think of it like an orchestrator where the user can prompt the agent mode telling, hey, this is the task I want to follow. And the agent mode, the root agent will take those instructions and then like it'll go ahead and like spin multiple sub-agents. So each sub-agent will have like a specific task it's assigned to, and it gets the context and everything from the root agent, which is basically the orchestrator, and like what tools it permissions it can like perform. And with that, I could go ahead and perform those actions, and then each of those agents summarize what they need to do and then bundle up their results and provide it back to the root agent, and that's what you see as within the agent-based workflows. So from this architecture perspective, so we are looking at like more of not only just user to agent interactions, but also like how the agents interact within themselves, the memory, the context, like the tool executions. We are also focused on those aspects as well. So some of the controls like we did were like for tool misuse. So how are we going to like handle those? Like we implemented like a specific server-side allow list, and also like we also added like human in the loop. Like for any high sensitive or like any high impact actions, we need a human in the loop to like making sure like your agent doesn't go rogue. And things like identity abuse. Right now, like we are using like user scoped tokens. Basically, whatever access your Postman or like the user of the Postman has, the same access is granted to the agent, so it can all escalate privileges. And in terms of memory poisoning, think of it like every conversation starts as a clean slate. So any conversation is just contained, the memories or the context is just contained within that particular conversation. There's no cross-context abuse and things like that. And for command execution, we have like stop like any arbitrary execution on the server side. Like any execution, like we have like a predefined allow list of tools, and also like any execution, it needs a human in the loop to approve those actions. And in terms of supply chain, this is like one of the other major risks, right? Like when you look into like enterprise customers, one of the major things, like how are we going to like adopt like from the governance perspective? So we provide like some administrative controls where they can like allow what kind of, whether like specific users, teams, or groups within Postman can adopt agent mode, or they can like completely disallow it. And we also have like a feature flag, which can be used as a kill switch. So things like that. So the key takeaway here is every control exists to mitigate some of the risks which are like identified within the OWASP framework. So that's how we were able to like architect our agent behavior to particularly mitigate those risks. And now with like threat modeling and architecture being done, right, the next focus is like how do we perform testing? We traditionally, like we use like a combination of black box versus white box testing. So think of black box as like you do not have any context about like what the system is. You come from an attacker point of view. And white box is like where you have like context of the system, like what are the controls in place and what's the architecture, and then you kind of validate those controls are properly in place. So kind of like took those two approach. And in terms of the scope as well, right, like we are no longer like just worried about like the user to agent interaction. It's also more about the internal summarization, anonymization, how efficiently are they done. And our test cases were also like aligned to those particular risks. So for example, like when you look into whole goal hijack, we were looking at like how we can do prompt injection, RAG injection, and what are some of like the instruction override scenarios the agent can perform. So those were like our test cases. And for tool misuse, like you kind of like rely on those permissions and like the confirmation gates like you have implemented, and like that's how we validated those. And for command execution, we have like separated like the client-side tools versus the server-side tools. The client-side tools is basically within the Postman infrastructure, and the server-side controls are, think of it like what can be allowed to like for like basic web search, so those can be allowed. And for any other things, you need a human in the loop to execute those transactions. And data leakage, as I mentioned here earlier, like we're trying to test like cross-context, cross-workflow access, and whatever privileges the user has, that's the same privilege the agent also has. So kind of like verifying those. And for resource abuse, we kind of like evaluated with the cost and like the rate limiting and load amplifications test case scenarios. So from a testing perspective, think of it like instead of just testing for generic AI risk, we are like more focused on the agent behavior, like how it's supposed to behave. And that's how we aligned our test cases so that like each of those test plans map to a corresponding risk within the OWASP framework. So when you look into it, okay, so these are the OWASP risks, we have these controls, and for each controls and for these risks, we have those corresponding test cases, so we were able to validate the entire workflow. Finally, let's talk about the risk assessment, right? Like this is one of the major problems we see, like how do we like prioritize like those risks? With Postbot, like initially when we were looking into it, like everything seemed important, like we were talking about. Okay. Everything seemed important, like when we were looking into like model training or like the pipeline and things like that, like how do we focus what is important and what is relevant for us? With agent mode, like some of the things were not relevant because we are no longer training those models, right? We are like just more focused on the agent behavior. So how do we like shift our focus? And this is where like the OWASP Agentic framework really helped us like in shifting our narrative from, okay, cutting down all the noise, like what is less relevant, like we don't need to focus on the model behavior or data integrity of like the model itself, but more focused on like the framework, what the framework provides you. And also it was able to provide us with establish a clear ownership program between like what's a shared responsibility was from a user perspective versus a vendor perspective. So not everything can be like contained within agents. For example, like we also acknowledge like some of the residual risk, like for example, prompt injection. That's not something which can be eliminated because that's something which is inherent to the LLM systems itself. And also anonymization, that also is a best effort. Like there could be like edge cases, there could be some customer patterns or like custom patterns which we need to like account for. And last thing, like the vendor model behavior, right? Like we are using like Anthropic or like OpenAI models, so we have the implicit trust in those models to like in our system. So think of it like we were able to like provide like relevance and prioritize based on these framework. And with that said, like I would like to summarize, we were able to create a comprehensive threat model for our agent mode based on the agentic AI threats and mitigation. And for development of the agent mode itself, we use the Securing Agentic Applications Guide as a North Star. And for testing, of course, we use the agentic applications and the LLM applications top 10 so that like we can map those risks into those controls. And in the future, we are planning to use the Threat Defense Compass and the AI Threat Teaming Guide to further improve our security posture at Postman. So one key takeaway is we moved our mindset from just thinking about like securing our agent from like a runtime behavior perspective, and then like we were able to make sure providing a structure to our approach is what moved us in the right direction, and that's where like OWASP Agentic Top 10 framework really helped us, so that like we know like we have provided appropriate coverage and the quality of the results we are providing to our customers. So that's all I have for you guys today. Any questions? Yeah.
You just recently mentioned like having trust in models. So I don't know if you saw that Composer 2 from Cursor is based on a Kimi Chinese model. How do you enforce trust in that kind of a situation?
In terms of like using...
Like trusting your model.
So that's something which you have to evaluate, right? Like what models you're going to use. Like within Postman, we provide like support for like a bunch of models, and it's upon the user to select, or like even the enterprise or governance provide you like, okay, you can allow these models versus you can disallow these models. So we provide the capabilities in terms of like what can be allowed, but it's at the end of the time, at the end, it's the user's choice about like what works best for their architecture, right? So yeah.
Thank you. So you had mentioned several agentic threats as part of risk assessment, but you had chosen 7 versus all 10. Just curious, can you explain?
Oh, those are just examples. Like, I don't want to like go around the road for like talking about everything, but like in a nutshell, like we have like covered like most of the test cases, and like we have established a shared responsibility model. Like if you look at the slide, right? So this one, like
Not this one, sorry, if you go down a little
Yeah.
bit further. And the risk, yeah. Next one, please.
risks. Okay.
Just curious, like you had listed some of the specific ones. Did you consider this like higher priority as compared to all the top 10?
So this is the approach we took. Like we might have not listed everything, but like it's more of like what we focused on like for our first iteration of our agent mode, and then as the agent evolves, like those are other things which will come in the
Okay.
pipeline as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hi, for threat modeling, are you applying any framework like Stride, or how do you do threat modeling? Is it a tool you are using or just a manual process, or how?
So
what-
we don't use a tool per se for now. It's more of like we are trying to adopt the agentic framework, and then like using a traditional threat modeling approach, we go ahead and like talk with the development team and then like figure out like what's the best way, and like trying to provide them with these kind of guardrails to make sure like when they are developing itself, we are kind of like embedded within the design phase rather than like just more of like a proactive, more of a reactive approach. So.
And are you applying this Stride model type paradigm, or just like
So-
how do you evaluate the design for this risk?
So initially when we started with Postbot, right, like we kind of like had like a, not like a Stride model, but you can say like you can apply those, any framework, what works best for you. But like when we looked into it, like we wanted to provide like coverage from the runtime perspective for the agent mode specifically. So we were focused on like the risks which the OWASP framework provides us, and then like we were trying to correlate, okay, what is the agent actual behavior, like what is happening, and then like kind of like trying to evaluate like how we can prioritize those, like based on like what is the imminent threat in that context, right? Like, so that's how we were able to like kind of like prioritize. But we don't like kind of have like a strict framework where like, okay, this is what we use, and like we don't like, so we come at it like a holistic perspective. It's not just like focusing on like one, but like kind of like looking at from like the, what do you say, like the behavior of like how the agent, like what's expected and what's the use case, and that's how we take that approach.
Thank you. And one more question. In the runtime, do you use any sandbox or anything like that to prevent against any of these threats, or how do you validate, like how do you protect against data exfiltration or?
That's a good question. I might have to get back to you like offline. So yeah. Any further questions?
Just curious, do you have a way of keeping, let's call it an agent catalog, like we have a service catalog, like in your environment?
Sorry, again?
In your environment, do you happen to keep an agent catalog, or like what agents are running in prod? What are the tools that I have access to? And if so, how do you do that?
Sorry, can you repeat that because there's some background noise?
If you keep a catalog of all the agents that are running in prod and the tools that I have access and all that, like
Yes.
how do you do that?
Yes, we do have like a catalog where we kind of like know like what are the agents which we have, and like and also like provide from a governance perspectives within our team itself. So yeah.
Can you share how you do that? Like, is it just a repo that you keep them, or like if they're, yeah.
We can connect offline. I can like share. I can get in touch with someone and like get more context to you. But yeah, thank you for the question.
So I have a question on ASI 07. So when you were thinking about like inter-agent traffic and communication, how did you write some of those test cases? How did you make sure that agents were not leaking information to other agents? So in terms of inter-agent interaction, like the agent itself, like so for any conversation you begin with an agent, like it has a tuple like of like a conversation ID tied to a user, and then when that conversation spins up into like multiple agents, it has this unique token, which will have like, and that context and memory is just contained with that particular agent, and that agent, say for example, like if I have like 3 agents, like 1, 2, 3, like, and
one will not have like context of like what is happening in 2. So it like whatever it'll do, the agent 1 will do, it'll kind of like summarize it and then like provide that feedback directly to the root orchestrator. So that's how like we were able to like kind of like segregate those contexts. So there's no sharing between the agents itself. The only shared knowledge is the like knowledge base where like all the agents are aware about like what is expected and like what is the workflow. So. Any questions? All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. We're going to get our ASI panel up here. So our Agentic Security Initiative team, who's been working on the Agentic Security Initiative for a while. So as we get our chairs out here, it's a great opportunity to kind of have our team, I mean, these folks have been working on the Agentic Security Initiative, not just the top 10, but also a lot of the other research and resources that we've been putting out. So we'll get an opportunity to kind of go through some things with them. And as we get here set up, just give us just a minute here to set up. All right, it looks like everybody's got a mic, so that sounds like the time to get started here, right? So let me start by asking each of them to introduce themselves. Start on the end.
Rock Lambros, ASI core team member, Director of AI Standards and Governance at Zenity.
I'm Kayla Underkoffler, also a core contributor on the ASI team here. And I'm the Director of AI Security and Policy Advocacy at Zenity.
Hi, I'm Karen Katz. I'm leading the top 10 for Agentic AI at OWASP and a core team member, and I'm Director of Threat Detection Research at Zenity.
So I'm Ron Del Rosario. I'm not from Zenity. I'm from SAP. I'm the co-lead for the Agentic Security Initiative, along with a gentleman named John Sotiropoulos, based in UK, who couldn't join us today because he has an event with NATO somewhere in the UK. So it's an amazing guy, but we miss him.
Yeah. I do have to say, when we started off this initiative, Kayla was the only one working at Zenity.
Yes. Yeah, and it was a pretty, you know, it's still a pretty diverse group who's working on the project. So there are hundreds of people who have contributed. I think you had a great slide, Karen, this morning that kind of showed all the people who have been contributing to that, just the Agentic Security Initiative alone.
I actually think it's working. No. All right. So I actually think that we hit above 100 contributors only for the top 10 for Agentic AI, and the most amazing thing for me was to see that the entire industry got united. Competitors worked together, vendors and practitioners, executive, it came all across the board, government being a part of it. So I think it's really important to keep us not biased to any side of, you know, of the thing. So I think we really did a good job in that.
Yeah, and so why don't we get off with some questions? I'll kind of give a couple of questions and we'll kind of get different people's points of view on it. And so, look, you know, AppSec has been around. We've talked about LLMs. You know, we did the LLM top 10, but now we're talking about agentic. So when you think about threat modeling, what's different?
Shall I start?
Go.
All right. So I think there are 2 or 3 different aspects, and let's start by talking about the architecture. So when we were talking about LLMs, the main input to an LLM was user input or context, but it was tags from either user or context. When we're talking about agents, suddenly we got other agents that could serve as an input. We got MCPs that could serve as an input, and the output changes as well, because if we're talking about LLMs, we're talking about mainly data retrieval or recommendations, but we're talking about text. And then with agentic AI, we're talking about actions being executed by the agent most of the time. And therefore, the threat modeling has been affected because it's not only data exfiltration that is a huge risk, but also workflow hijacking was born.
When it comes to threat modeling for AI agents, one of the cool things, the memories that I have when we first started with the threats and mitigations guide was having a couple work sessions specifically on creating threat models for AI agents. And we picked some generic use cases because at the time, we weren't, this is over a year ago, we didn't have very specific, this is in production, we could copy this, build out this system model, and then conduct the threat modeling. So for me, the biggest thing was the journey of not even, just barely a year ago, people were coming to this working group, absolute experts in threat modeling, had been doing it forever, but yet there's a question of, oh, what's the actual system model? What are all the components of an agent? How exactly do agents work? And so people coming in just to learn about the system model, and then from that, now how do we threat model this? So for me, just the step back from the actual technical components is just how far we've come in a year from our first threats and mitigations guide to where we are now, talking about real systems, what we just heard. And that journey for how we've developed all that, it's been super cool to be a part of.
Yeah, just to add in that, I think for me, when I was starting to do threat modeling with my team for agentic applications or products augmented by LLM, number one for me is always agency. Wait, what are we talking about? Let's decide on the definition if this is a true autonomous agent or just a semi-autonomous, that humans still get to decide what to do. When there should be a prompt that says, hey, I want to do this. Do you allow me to, let's say, read your email or forward this? And the human says yes. I think agency is number one for me from a high-level conceptual perspective that differentiates my threat modeling approach with traditional LLMs, static Q&A systems. And then second one, like what Kyla alluded to, when we started this initiative in November 2024, we're still struggling and we're still fighting amongst each other on what's the common architecture from an agentic AI perspective, right? So we're basically trying to, we even worked on weekends, I can still remember, because we have a lot of colleagues from the other side of the world. So we're fighting amongst each other. So this doesn't look like a reference architecture for agents. It looks like a standard web app with an LLM at the back end. But eventually we were able to come up to we were able to reach common ground. When you say agents will have access to tools. They will have a certain level of agency. And third one is they have access to long-term memory. So we're able to focus on those three, and that's where everything started.
Yeah, I think that was even before we had things like MCP and A2A, or even a glint in some folks' eye, in fact.
Yeah, and you want to add something?
No, I was going to say that's exactly where I was going to go with it. I think when we figured out how to threat model LLMs, we figured out how to threat model LLMs for the most part. But when we figured out how to threat model agents, then MCP came along, right? Different tool calls came along. The different deployment models came along. Is it SaaS? Is it endpoint? Is it developer created custom? Right now, skills is the new hotness, right? So I think right. So I think now how the attack surface within the agentic ecosystem changes, and how rapidly it changes. That's the challenge.
Yeah, I think there's another thing that really affects the threat model, and it's the non-determinism concept, that it's true for LLMs as well, but taking that non-determinism with autonomy and putting that in production is a huge game changer for the threat modeling.
So, one of the things we talked about was, as you talk about threat modeling, we've kind of gone through this journey to kind of get to where we are right now. Learned a lot of things along the way. So kind of understanding a little bit more about from what you've discovered through this, what are some non-obvious but critical security risks for agentic AI that are unique to agentic AI that stand out? that maybe people are underestimating. And we've talked a lot about it today, and I'm sure there's a lot of conversation at RSA about it. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think Ron just kind of mentioned it. It's the least agency aspect and the understanding that least privilege does not equal least agency. Least privilege is what does the agent have access to. Least agency is effectively what can the agent decide on the fly on a per action basis, right? OAuth doesn't give us that, right? And I think, you know, people, at least the conversations I have, still conflate the two, right? And don't understand that there are unique and distinct challenges that we need to address. OAuth kind of answers one, right? Doesn't touch the least agency part.
I think one of the risks that are often overlooked today is the inter-agentic communications. And I think many of us, we talk about supply chain, and I'm sure each of you is concerned about MCP and to discover MCPs, and I know we're at the very beginning of it, but I think that the understanding that each communication channel, whether it is A2A channel, whether it is an MCP, is risky and should be untrusted and shouldn't be handled, should be observed. I think that's a very important understanding, not only to map which connections there are, but also to inspect into that communication.
So let me add something. I think we're underestimating the lack of business context that security teams receive when they're doing a security review or risk assessment of a specific LLM or agentic application, right? So I think business context is so important because it enables the AppSec teams to be able to have a mental map of the things that can go wrong with a specific LLM or AI application, right? So if the developer or security engineer or the security architect can develop this mental map, he can easily tell if this agent is deviating from its intended task because of that underlying business context. Now, business context, it all depends on the environment where the agents are operating. It all depends on the line of business. You can be a credit card company. You can be a healthcare company. So this is why business context is very important. You need to have those in advance before you go through a threat modeling session. It's like going a little bit high level. Wait a minute, before we talk about technical stuff, what problems are we trying to solve with this agent? And what are we using now to solve this problem? And why do we need to go to the agentic framework? So like basic stuff, but usually, oftentimes, when it comes to escalated issues, at the end of the day, it's all about a security engineer from SOC or a pen test, red team engineer lacking business context, right? So I think we're underestimating that. It's very important that we document that as early as possible before we go to the full technical route of threat modeling.
I really agree, and if I may add to that, I think it's super critical for remediation as well, because when you're in an incident and you're not sure how many people adopted this agent, does it serve a critical workflow or not, how can you actually remediate what's happening? How can you know if you can isolate the agent, if you can shut it down for a while or not, if you're unaware of the business context? So
Correct.
I definitely agree with you, Ron.
Just to add to what Karen explained, it's all about, I'm going to ask you guys, if you guys have agents in your enterprise right now, were you guys able to map this to a critical business function? If you guys can answer that, you guys are a step ahead already when it comes to threat modeling and, knock on wood, incident management involving agents. You need to have that mapping. It has to be visible across the board, especially senior leaders. So when something happens, it's easy for the team to identify and trace where it's coming from and what critical business function is going to be affected. It can be your ITSM system, it can be your payment system, it can be your CRM, so that's very important.
And I think another thing is along this business use cases, like how the business is using AI agents. A lot of times we hear, well, if you're just using the out-of-the-box assistant, we're going to start with that because it's so low risk. But then people assume you don't have to look at the data that assistant is connected to. Still, the agency that out of the box agent has, the things that it can do, the risk, the impact. So I would say another part is just thinking that maybe the more complex agents are much more risky than an out-of-the-box agent, and that's just not true. So overlooking the risk because you feel like the platform or someone has all of that covered, that's definitely something don't let that creep in. Every agent needs to be assessed from the ground up, no matter where it's built or how it's built.
I think it's a really solid point because I think it's actually the opposite. I think the no-code or low-code agents are even riskier than those that are more complicated because everyone can use them super simply and easily. Oh, wow, that's a surprise. Super simply and easily, and often these users that are non-developers are less aware of the risks. So I see these agents as even riskier.
Yeah, and I think another building on top of that, you mentioned the developers. Developers, are all excited about, hey, we have million token context windows in Opus 4.6 now, and kind of forgetting that, every token is an attack surface, right? And that context route is real, and not so getting lazy about managing the context of those agents, like what the context that the agents actually pull in, will connect it to all the tools, and you're 50,000 tokens in before you even issue a system call, right? And just kind of understanding like that, those context engineering concepts about what gets pulled in when on a per action basis again, and that's not a skill set that security engineering teams have today to go out and validate, right? Or AppSec teams have today to go out and validate. We are dependent on making developers aware of secure agentic coding practices.
Yeah, so I mean, like you're saying, context matters. Context matters in the business, context matters in the application. For developers, it's a real challenge in terms of what do they need to think about differently and how they need to approach applications differently. If you were to think about one item that you would say is a must-do for a developer, if they're looking at building an agentic system, if they have to do one thing and one thing only, what would that be?
For me, it's actually easy.
Okay.
Because it got my favorite, and you know it. But I really believe in dual intent verification. What can I do? I really think that is the thing. And I think, first of all, mapping and understanding the initial goal of each of the agents, and then making sure that both the inputs being sent to the agent are actually meets this goal, and making sure as well that the actions that the agent is taking actually reflects the initial goal of it.
One thing is tough.
I was going to say, I don't.
That's intentional. We want to make it tough. Everybody has to start with one thing.
Yeah. You want?
Yeah. So
I have one.
You have one.
I
Okay.
think
I have another.
You're making it hard for us.
I do. Well, that's my job.
Okay.
We're trying to.
So I think I'd go back to developers understanding the agency level of what they're trying to implement. I think that's very important because everyone's talking about autonomous systems now, autonomous agents. So I think if there's only one thing that I can help the developer with or explain stuff, I would focus on agency. And I think if a developer has a solid grasp of what agency means and the levels of autonomy for an agent, I think he or she should be able to do a little bit of threat modeling on her own when she develops the application. I think it's tough, but I think having a solid understanding of what agency means for the agentic application that she's developing, I think it's very important.
Yeah, so if we talk about things for developers, the one thing for developers, you know what's coming next. What's the one thing for security practitioners? So just to kind of even out the score. Again, agents are different because now we're not dealing with deterministic applications, right? And so where do you start?
Just one.
Just one? No, but honestly,
I have an answer.
Well, no, I think, every security engineer or whatever we call them today, needs to focus on AppSec, right? Basic AppSec principles. You need to be able to have those conversations with developers because and we've been saying this since the cloud days, everything is code. But, you still talk to like an infrastructure security person, and, if it's not a Teradata script, they really don't know what that means. But right now, truly everything is code, right? We're going to see agentic infrastructures. We're going to see all this sort of stuff. So being able to have that conversation with your developers about the least agency concept, but then actually okay, Mr. Security Person, you're telling me about this. How do I do this? Do I just prompt it in the LangChain system call if I'm a custom dev? I'm building it on whatever, Salesforce, Agentforce. Can I even do that? Is there a button to set? Like, how do I do that? So being able to have those conversations with your developers.
Yeah, so I think one thing is I'm probably not going to get one thing out of me. I don't think I can get to that level, that distilled level.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking about from the developer side of the house is actually was still landing on the security side of the house anyways, which is like, we just need to build in the best, especially I think citizen development, that's kind of like my interest area. We as security need to build in the baseline default that we want them to use. We need to make it easy. We need to remove the choices that we don't want them to be able to make, because in the end, you are going to be trying to translate these security principles to somebody who is in finance or human resources or marketing. They can now build an agent, and let's just take the choices away, or better put, let's give them the right choices that they can make.
So secure by
things
default.
away.
Yeah, secure by default.
Yeah. And
That's
so
a good one.
like make it easy.
I think I'm hearing policy as code, maybe maybe like OPA, Cedar,
Yeah.
that type of stuff.
Yes.
If we got enough time, I got one more that I think is important to talk about. I think it's often overlooked and super important, and is to map cascading failures. I think that not enough security people, security professionals know to map which are there's operations that are composed of multi-agent systems, and what happens if one of those agents fails. What happens then? And I think it's super important to map it from the first place, and then to have boundaries for each of the agents in the process, instead of just waking up one day understanding all the operations are down, right?
So, one of the things that comes up often is, agents, we talked about autonomy. We talked about the fact that having agency. What is the impact on things like observability for agentic systems?
I can start. I'm a big fan of this. So I think at this stage, we should start thinking about not only monitoring a single task invoked by agents. I think we should start thinking about multi-agent systems in parallel invoking multiple tasks. So we can have a baseline where, okay, we have agent A, and agent A is supposed to field questions from customers, and this agent will communicate to our CRM system, populates the system, and gets saved at database, and that's the end of that's the actual session. We need to start getting used to understanding this baseline of how these agents operate from a monitoring perspective and telemetry, right? Because what's going to happen, it's going to be a nightmare once we start introducing multi-agents, right? What's going to happen is an agent, same scenario. What if the customer asks more questions and this agent has the capability, wait, I can't answer that, let me talk to agent B. And agent B is going to have another session invoking another set of tools, touching other data. It can be sensitive, it can be public, doing the same thing, and ends, right? So it's like layers of agent communication. And so, but what's important, we start with the baseline, right? We need to understand how many agents do we deploy, and each agent we should have an idea what are they supposed to do from a task perspective, from a monitoring perspective, so we can easily identify who's deviating from the norm and if multi-agents are giving us problems, because it will give us problems most likely.
Yeah, I think you need to build that contextual awareness both within the agent and across the agents, and maintain that contextual awareness so that way you can correlate potential issues across the agents, right? Like one agent may start drifting, but the other hasn't picked up on it yet, and now you want to be able to catch that pattern early, right? So call it whatever, UE for agents, I don't care what you call it, right? But, and which is, you know, something that like we as an industry have really recently started focusing on.
It's also not easy.
No.
Observability is not easy, and I think like the more you get into the fact that these agents are built wherever they're built, you either have to go to that platform to find the logs you need to look for to track the activity, or you know you're an endpoint developers, you know, and they're working on their laptop, and how are you going to monitor that? So definitely not to say that the observation is going to be an easy task. It's so critical, and yet also so complex across the different builds and everything like that.
I think a part of it is that there was not one standard that said, okay, you should take and you should log this and that event, and every developer or every company could create their own standard of how they're doing it, and then you as a security professional should have dealt with many different ways of companies logging their agents' behavior, if they're even logging it. And I know that Rock is doing lots of work on it, so I think it was sharing Rock.
So I am totally going to plug aos.owasp.org. Stands for Agent Observability Standard.owasp.org. It's been a little dormant. I'm resurrecting it, and it will be changing. But just it's a place for you to go look and to start. Right, there's some defined schemas across pillars. And stay tuned. And if you think observability is hard, control is even harder.
Yeah, and pull requests are always welcome.
I think
Pull requests are always
I want to add something, Rock. I think open telemetry is slowly starting to be a standard.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are starting to adopt OTel or open telemetry. A lot of SIM providers, we're all familiar with SIMs, are using open telemetry, and it's slowly starting to be the standard of choice to monitor the entire span, the entire sequence of actions these agents are taking. So if we as an industry, if we can decide with open telemetry, the standard, it will make things easier.
So the O in AOS, and when I mentioned there are changes coming, is to shift that O to OTel.
Yeah.
Right, as an OTel feed into their GenAI working group or whatever the case may be.
Right. All right, so a couple of questions. So let's say people want to start. I'm going to jump back to the work that we've been doing as a project and talk about, we have a lot of people talking about how do I start consuming this? Because as we talked about earlier, we put out like 50 different guides on different things. Just the Agentic group alone, we have 7 different aspects and guides on different things. So where should people start?
I think the threats and mitigations, which is the maiden document that we released back in February 2024 or 2025?
2025.
2025, I think, is a good place to start, because this is how I explain this document to everywhere I go. It's basically how we positioned the document to provide the why to our audience, right? Why do we need to start thinking about the potential threats, and here are some mitigations for Agentic AI, right? I think that's a good document to start, the threats and mitigations, and then followed by the Securing Agentic Applications Guide, which is basically the how. So this applies to us. If you're an engineer, developer, architect, those 2 documents are good to start with. And of course, we released a lot of good documents already. So
Yeah, I think in the middle of that, I would recommend to read the State of Agentic AI, led by our dear Evgeny, which is a great opportunity to mention his amazing work as another core team member. And in there, we tried to define the landscape. So we're talking about what it is. And I remember we defined the taxonomy of what is enterprise AI agent, what are multi-agent systems. And it seems so far away, but it's actually been in 25. So it's funny to think. And I know that we're currently working on the next version, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're currently working on the next version. It is almost a complete rewrite of last year's, because that's how fast the landscape is moving. It was originally titled Landscape Document, and we got shut down. But I like State of Agentic even better. But that is how fast the landscape is moving. And so we're hoping to get that released in the next couple months. I think by InfoSec Europe. June, I think is our goal.
And
I could be lying, but I think that's our goal.
And then also, that's one of our upcoming initiatives is to provide some more easier consumed instructions for our audience, right? For this is your journey, this is what you should do, or where you should start, and why. So it's something that we're going to be working on as well to continue to help the users of this understand really what you should look at, why, at what stage.
And I will say, everybody, when they think about the Agentic Security Initiative, immediately goes to the Agentic Top 10. But without the Threats Mitigations Guide and the Securing Agentic Applications Guide, the Agentic Top 10 doesn't exist, right? So I think it's really good to go get that kind of the foundational knowledge that build up the Agentic Top 10.
Yeah, it will actually help you understand the top 10 way better.
Yeah, as I often tell people, we didn't start with the top 10 in November, though a lot of people wanted a top 10 in November. But as we've talked about today, the application patterns weren't there, didn't have things like A2E, how do these things communicate? None of that was yet defined. So, But it laid out some very important principles that were used to kind of help curate over time. We did a number of hackathons and other practical activities, so it wasn't just developing documents to kind of come up with this. This was coming back from real deployments, people working, doing some hackathons, figuring out what's working, what's not, and rolling that into that experience and insights. And then I'm just going to add one thing that we don't often talk about, I find, is the stuff that we have on GitHub, especially some of the sample agent code and things like that that the team has put out to get your hands dirty. So if you're a developer and you want to get your hands dirty, or a security practitioner, the research and the documents we're providing are awesome. Don't forget about the content we're putting out on the GitHub to help support these conversations, because this can get you up to speed quickly. All right, so now that we've talked about where to get started, so talk about what's next. So for 2026, what are we doing next?
I can share 2 exciting projects. So the first is our Professionals Council. We've been talking about the review process we've been doing with the Agentic Top 10. And as part of it, many experts, both executive and practitioners across all levels, been a part of the process. And we witnessed that we got different inputs from each industry. From finance, we got one input. From manufacturing, we got another input. From government, of course, it was another input. From the big firms, Gampai was other input. And after that, I said to John, listen, we gotta take all these opinions and have our own council for each of the projects that we're doing. For each paper, we want to have their opinions, because at the end of the day, that's what made the top 10 so successful is that it already was promised to be implemented because the people were actually being a part of this creation. And I want to continue to have that for all of our projects. So that is one thing. I think the second thing is to have a research council. So John, if you see it, I know that you love it. And the reason we wanted to create it is that we think that the academy has so many great minds, and it's very hard to be super connected to the problems in the industry while you're in the academy. And after doing the top 10, I was thinking that there is not enough research on very burning issues. For example, take the inter-agentic communication, take scanning failures. I really believe these are problems that are important for humanity, not only for companies earning money. And we really want to make this connection and to broaden our impact even more. So there are some people in the crowd that are going to help with it. I won't tease. But yeah, stay tuned. And of course, we got lots to do with the top 10, but I'll share more soon.
I mean, the roadmap is maybe overcommitted, but
there's a lot on it.
There's a lot on it, but I think one of the things I am most looking forward to working on is taking things like the Agentic Top 10 or the cheat sheets, whatever the case may be, and making them machine readable. So something that you can take and just plug them into whatever your Cloud Code hooks or whatever the case may be. And right, so allowing you to take instant action on them instead of taking the document and figuring it out, okay, that's great, how do I do this in code? I think another initiative, and I just totally went blank, so I'm going to pass it to Kayla because we're working on it together, and I totally forget what it is right now.
I wasn't gonna go. I don't know which one you're talking about. Yes,
There are so many.
It's like a
Really, there
Q3
are so many.
It's like a Q3, Q4 thing, and like my brain is barely past,
Yeah.
Q2, which starts next week. So.
Well, I was going to play off yours, though, because one of the things I'm excited about is we have a lot of different initiatives where we're basically going to take the top 10 and make it applicable for different audiences. So for your, I think we have like just like software developers, right, is one group. Citizen developers is one group. So how can we take this top 10 and translate it, make it applicable for these groups who often are not involved in OWASP? Like you're not going to find a traditional citizen developer who is super aware of the AI agent top 10 or agentic applications top 10. And so we want to make this translatable for them, useful for them. And then, of course, the hard part is actually socializing that and getting into those audiences to say, hey, this is for you. But I'm really excited about that. And that's split across a couple different of the quarters and contributors who will own various audiences. But it's one of the things I'm excited about this year.
Yeah, and this is not yet in the roadmap, but we're starting to think about physical AI. So it's everyone saying
Actually, in the roadmap, you don't remember. You put it.
Well,
not officially on the
It's in the
roadmap.
roadmap.
So the good
Don't
news
you
is,
worry.
So the good news is we've got 8 working groups, and we've got a couple that are thinking about physical security. And so we have a process. One of the things we've done for the project overall is we made it very much a community voting process so that people can propose new initiatives and the various teams vote on those initiatives. And so we have a process to get things started. But there's also some requirements. We have some timelines of what things need to get done because we found that was a good way to kind of keep up with the pace of AI change that seemed to do well for us. So any new initiatives that come in, we want to make sure there's enough of a core team to deliver the first deliverable within 6 months. So that's sort of the window of operational side of what we do. We have a agile process in place to kind of do that. So we do our sprints. We have a sprint structure that we apply to all of these. So as we have new things coming in, we try to make sure we're moving them quickly, have a governance in place to make sure we're not just creating a thing to create it, but we have the energy behind it and it's going to make an impact with end users and practitioners like yourselves.
Yeah, and I will say that everything, at least from a timing perspective on the roadmap, hinged around surviving RSA, so buckle up. I mean, it's early in the week. We still have a couple days to survive, but buckle up.
Yeah, we do have more initiatives announced. So with no more initiatives in the works, even outside of the Agentic group that are rolling out after RSA. And to your point, getting through RSA was the goal. And now that we're through RSA, I know we're not alone in that. More stuff will be coming up. So with that in mind, for the Agentic Security Initiative, how do people get engaged? How do the people become contributors? How can they get started?
It is.
Cool. Please do.
Get into the Slack, right? It's, I think one of the things we're working on is like a get started quick working guide too, right?
It's your item,
But for right now,
remember?
get into the Slack, DM any of us.
Yes.
It's Project GenAI ASI
So
Agentic Security Initiative.
So it was kind of a test for
Not
them
on
too,
here?
just so you know. So
Right.
it is genai.owasp.org/contribute. And there are the details how you can get involved in all of the project areas. But
Failed. Failed test.
Almost.
DM us. I just assume you're all in the Slack because you already should be.
yeah. But join the Slack. If you already have an OWASP Slack, you can see the different Slacks we have. They're all tagged GenAI. So the GenAI ASI, the Agentic Security Initiative, is the tag for the GenAI group and the core team there. And that's sort of the structure we use throughout it. So jump in and contribute. Other thoughts of what's coming up that you need contributors for?
I think many people usually log into the Slack and then they DM me, how can I contribute, like where to start? And the best answer will be to the topic that you most relate to what is interesting to you. to what you love, to what you want to spend your time on, because OWASP papers takes lots of work. That's why we are very proud at their quality, but it takes a lot of work and sleepless nights and holidays. And if you won't love it and relate to it and be passionate about it, it will be hard for you. So it's about what you love and what you feel that you have value to provide and what you're
Yeah.
knowledgeable about.
Absolutely. And just to add to what Karen already mentioned, you don't have to be the most technical person in the room to make a difference. So you can be a good project manager. You can be you're good in resolving conflict within teams, and you're good in editing documents. You're good in a different language. Everyone's welcome. You don't have to be the most technical person in the room to make a difference, and you don't need to be an AI expert. You don't need to be a cybersecurity expert. I think I'm super proud of the team, not only the core team, but also all the developers, all the contributors, because it's well-rounded. We have someone with a different set of expertise and different set of opinions, and they're all bringing that to the table, so we make the documents and our projects more well-rounded. So I think it's a great team. I think you will learn a lot from people that are super smart. I think it's gonna be the smartest, probably in my experience. I've met most of the smartest people I've met in my career here at OWASP, Agentic Security Initiative. So you'll meet people with multiple PhDs, with multiple masters, and they're super, but they don't talk a lot. So it's your job. It's your job to ask them the right questions and to make them, to help you and to be able to produce a working document, a practical document. So everyone's welcome.
Yeah, and I'll just echo again what Ron said. You don't have to be a technical practitioner. You bring your problem, and that can be just as important. We talked about applying the agentic security to different vertical industries. We're looking at that across all of the resources that we're publishing, because each industry has its own unique flavor. And so as an industry, you bring your industry problems. They're going to have a different flavor. Bring it into the conversation, be part of that conversation. And so I want to make sure we also have time to ask questions of this group, since we have them all trapped here in these chairs for at least 10 more minutes, well, 7 more minutes. So I want to open it up for questions for folks, if anyone has any questions.
Yes, so I don't know if this is philosophical or business or what. It's more related to MCP. So I'm just kind of wondering, from what my discussions with people at the floor was and people have talked about, it feels like if you want to have more determinism out of agentic AI, you need to have multiple agents, which is like the inter-agentic discussion comes in. So I'm wondering about what you see as far as the trends for MCP, and where do you think it might go? Because, I mean, it comes down to identities and authentications and things like that. And do you see this is going the way like the World Wide Web went, and browsers are taking, that role of, hey, you have a certificate, this person or this business has a certificate, you can go to their website, do things. How do you see this is evolving in terms of going from a wide west of any server, any tool, to something that has more structure to it? Or do you see this going to be like organizational run PKIs versus, I don't know, I'm just wondering.
So unfortunately, I don't think that having a multi-agent system will help you to get more determinism. I don't think it's the case. I think it will help you to be more productive. I think it might help you to get a better result for a specific task. But I don't think it will make it more deterministic, from what I know. I think if we're looking at the multi-agent systems, regardless, what's going to happen is that if we're referring for our friends from NANDA, MIT, we're going to see, I believe, with time, some sort of Internet of Agents. And that is going to bring some major problems. That what we're seeing now is only the beginning, like the tip of the iceberg of what is going to be. So I do believe that the best is yet to come. Or the worst is yet to come. I don't know how to call it.
We got a preview with Maltbook, right?
Yeah.
So It was already plotting our demise within, what, an hour or two of being stood up. Yeah.
I have one. I'm gonna try. That's a super hard question. I think it's a hard problem too, you know. But I think we as an industry, we need to decide on what's going to be the standard communication protocol first between these agents. MCP is like, it's not really meant for inter-agent communication, right? We all know this. It's meant for exposing agents, giving it access to more tools and data and knowledge bases, right, and data sources. So I'm putting my $5 on A2A because it's been, I think it was donated to Linux Foundation already, right? Yeah. The agent-to-agent protocol. So I think my vision 2-3 years ago was like every technology company is going to have their own LLM, and most SaaS companies will rely on this LLM. And then agents came in, okay, scratch LLM. Most tech companies is going to have their own agents representing their company with the backend LLM that they train and develop, right? And then that's going to be the standard communication protocol between different tech companies. Like when you sign up for Salesforce, you always have integration with, let's say, ServiceNow or NetSuite or something like that. So it's going to be, and then we're going to replace now SaaS with agents as the highest level of abstraction representing tech companies. So I think that's my prediction. Don't bet on it, but I think we're slowly getting there because I think tech companies is seriously looking into outsourcing business functions that agents can handle at scale.
Yeah, I can actually share from a field that I see many companies adopting A2A as a standard, and I want to hope that it will get more and more secure, just as happened with HTTP and HTTPS.
Absolutely. I think this is why the ANS, Agent Naming Service, as the foundational infrastructure, it's like our PKI for agents, right? And then we're going to have more secure protocols, most likely soon, that will complement A2A, right? A lot of provenance, a lot of heavy crypto use for agents. I think that's what's going to happen. Secure model cards. I think that's what I'm predicting, specifically marketplaces, open agent marketplaces. When you need a service, you're a company, you're just going to subscribe to this open marketplace and look for a specific agent looking for the service that you need. It can be CRM, it can be payment processing, it can be healthcare. I think that's where we're headed to. That's why it's very important to think about security first, because it's going to be scary.
Hi, on the ASI's view on SAST versus DAST, how do you see it? Like, can you secure the agent by just looking at the code and documentation, or most of the security has to be on the runtime?
You want to answer? Okay. Yeah, I think they're referring to a question for me because I'm on the detection side, and I will split it into two parts, and we talked about it today in the panel that, of course, posture matters. You need to understand what is this agent at all. And obviously, when companies has hundreds of agents, it's a challenge by itself. It's a challenge to map which tools each agent has access to. And even if you know which tools each agent has access to, because we're handling so many different applications, how do you even know which tools is risky or not? Just for the context, Microsoft Copilot has more than 1,000 tools available for agents. So it's really hard to learn all of them, to get to know all of them. And each tool, by the way, has like tens of actions. So that's one thing. And of course, you can optimize that posture to a maximum, and you will need to work on it because obviously people change their agents on a daily basis, so it's really hard to do so unless it's automated. But even if you have the most perfect posture, when it comes to runtime, because the non-determinism concept of agentic AI, you must be able to inspect these interactions. You must be able to inspect the tools invocations. We've been talking a lot about RAG agents in the top 10. We've been talking a lot about agent called hijack. And it is so easy to hijack a goal of an agent. You just need one prompt. So even if a user created an agent with a specific goal in mind, and that's what you saw when you handled the posture of it, the moment after, like a few seconds after, it got a prompt that told him that its new goal is to transfer money to the attacker's account. You cannot know that from the first place. And if you will not look into the actions being executed, you have no chance to see it until it's too late. So I really believe it's super important to use runtime and I'll take it one step farther, to implement code-based boundaries before it's too late.
I'd like to ask, what's your view on agentic intent? How do we govern this? And how is this connected to least agency? Maybe it's the same.
Yeah, intent. You want to answer it? I can start, but it's too much.
So let me try to repeat the question. Your question is about agentic intent, and is the concept similar with agency?
Is it similar to least agency?
Least agency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just say, and then how do we govern?
Thank you.
So I think it's a multi-layered question, right? So first you need the observability hooks into the intent layer, right? Which each provider does differently, right? It gives you different access into what the agent intent is. And then you're monitoring that intent for the drift against whatever least agency guardrails or boundaries that you put on it, right? So you want to build in least agency to make sure that as the agent is generating its intent and actioning on its intent, that it's governance before architecture, that it's built in there. But then you also need the telemetry and the ability to monitor for that drift against that agency, and when is it trying to attempt to escape those bounds? Because let's not forget, before all else, a transformer model will complete its task, right? And that's all everything is underneath, from the LLM, up through the agents, right? As long as we're still talking about LLM-based agents, right? The transformer model will complete its task. Doing it correctly and within its guardrails is kind of secondary.
I think another question to ask is, which intent is valid from your side as a company and which is not? Because I can give you an example that I've been working for the context, I've been working on intent for like 2.5 years now, and some companies think that if a user asks to get some financial information or to do some financial transaction using the agent, that might be totally valid, because if they're working in financial corporation, or if the user is an investment banker, that could be totally fine. But other companies says that they want to understand who is the user that's asking the question, what's the user identity. Maybe it's someone from R&D that asked the question, and then it's not a valid use case. So I think intent by itself is a more complicated topic than we would think it is. And that's only the intent of the input, but what about the intent of the agent that's executing the action? So there's lots more to get into it.
Yeah, it sounds easy, but it's actually hard. But it's a good question. Is Ron Bitton still here from Intuit? So if you have time, connect with Ron Bitton, because he developed a system where he can trace an agent's intent, and he developed this system and to be able to map it to a set of tools, so he can tell if that intent of that agent is legitimate because it's associated to this specific tool. So it's a great research. Actually, try to get in touch with Ron Bitton from Intuit. He actually presented earlier. It's an amazing system. I think he's currently researching this.
I can also share that me and my team had to work on it for like 1.5 years and to build 15 different machine learning, deep learning models in order to understand the intention of a prompt, of an input. So it's a super hard problem if you break it down, but I think it's one of the most critical problems of our time. And I'll go back just saying in one sentence that don't forget about the dual intent verification. That's my main message for today.
And this is one agent. Like, we haven't even talked about intent inheritance across a multi-agentic chain.
Correct,
right?
correct.
Is there any, sorry.
Yeah, that is no shortage of complication, multi-agent, right? So intent, collaborative intent. Yeah, yeah.
Is there any initiative around these areas, like being able to declare the agent's goal, intent outside of agent's implementation so that the security layers can actually verify these things more deterministically, right? So like today now, if you implement an agent, you go into LangChain, you implement the agent invokes tool, but we don't really have any specification around metadata of the agent, like being able to declare the intent of the agent, being able to declare the goal of the agent. Is there any initiative around that, or do you see any value there if you kind of externalize that so that the security layers can look at it and can validate the runtime behavior of the agent against that metadata?
I don't think we have anything on the roadmap
Yeah.
specifically around that.
We were just talking about it.
Yeah, it's we.
You don't want to tease?
No, you can.
Yeah, we can share. Ron and I just talked about it, that maybe it's time for at least a cheat sheet about runtime agentic monitoring and enforcement, because it's such a burning question. I feel that we all started with posture and we kind of understand posture now as an industry, but we also understand that it is not enough. And we really want to help guide you in this journey, so I guess we will put that on the roadmap, right? We will have to talk with John too. John, if you're
Sure.
watching us, don't be mad.
There's also, going back to your question very quickly, there's also a concept of plan then execute within agents. It's basically you as an architect or developer, you look at the entire action space of your agents and what they're supposed to do, and you freeze that, right? I think this applies more to high assurance systems or networks, because this will not scale with enterprises or business that needs speed in real time. There's always a trade-off. You choose, okay? You want security or you want speed? You need to choose one. So with plan and execute, you're basically locking in all the steps that your agents will take, the tool calling, the database that we'll access to, and you will freeze that information flow. And then you pass that to, if it passes that your plan and execute plan, and then now everything's locked in, it's basically not prone to prompt injection, because there's no way you can inject additional tool calls or data calls, because the plan is already locked in and it's passed already to your system. So that's another approach that you can do.
Yeah, I think if we could do one very short question, because I think we need to get on to our next topic. But the good news is the group will be here. We've got our networking that's happening after here, so lots of opportunities for more conversation after this. So, got one more question?
No, mine is not a short question. So
Oh, okay.
I'll skip.
Is that a
Okay,
networking? That's
all
a
right.
networking question.
That's for later at the back.
That's
Yeah.
for later at the back with the beer and the other stuff. Yeah, we'll get there. So, great. So I want to thank the panel. Thank everybody.
Thank you.
Watch out for the wires.
And then I think we've got, coming up, our next discussion is going to be around our Finbot CTF. And I think I saw Sai moving forward here, so I'm going to let him take over. Do you have another update? Did you update slides too?
Slides too?
Oh, demo.
Demo.
Demo, okay.
Can we
Are you connected to the Wi-Fi?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, you can just pop this out and pop it in. So, I don't know if you need the slides that you have.
Oh, I'll go with this.
Okay.
Then switch to this.
Perfect.
When I'm ready for the demo.
Yeah, he's going to do some slides first, and then swap it up. So you're all good. All right.
All right, everyone, thank you, and thanks for the panel for those great practical insights. Everyone say hello to Finbot. My name is Venkat Saikishore Modlavalsa. You can call me Sai, and I'm supposed to be with Helen. Helen is cheering us virtually. I miss her, and thanks for her leadership. Me and Helen, we are co-leading this work stream as part of the OWASP GenAI security project. Yeah, Finbot is a initiative, it's a work stream under OWASP GenAI security project. That's where we are here today. And we have Helen and me leading this work stream and an amazing community of open source people who are contributing to us. Today, we are going to talk about all the guidance from our core team. How do you plug yourself in a more practical and hands-on environment? That's what Finbot is, right? Finbot is both close to real, and at the same time, we kind of sprinkled in certain virtual elements to it, like certain fictitious elements to it, so that you get a very safe playground environment to see all the agentic AI threats in action. Yeah, I'm going to do a demo shortly, but before that, what is Finbot, the current version that we're going to release, we're releasing out in the wild already, has? It's a multi-agentic system. We have multiple agents trying to onboard vendors. It's a vendor management system here. So there are, imagine you're a vendor, you want to onboard yourself, there's an agent for that. You upload an invoice, you want to get your invoice approved for that, you have an agent for that. And then you want to get your invoice paid, you want to get your frauds checked, compliance, there is an agent for that. So it's a system where you can wear multiple hats. You can be a good vendor, play with the system, and also know how the whole world is going to attack you or under the pressure, bad actors could influence you. Or you could be a bad vendor trying to influence the system and learn all about the agentic threats in action. And then comes the admin portal, right? You can also wear the hat of an admin and see how to configure MCP servers, check about the software supply chain vulnerabilities, tool poisoning, you name all the agentic threats that you can explore here in a hands-on environment. We have like 6+ agents here. There are 3 key portals I'm going to demo. All those 3 key portals are going to help you understand the whole agentic ecosystem and the threat landscape with several MCPs, tools, and workflows built in this playground environment. All of this to say that the whole Finbot CTF platform is built on top of OWASP ASI Top 10. So if you're playing with the system, I'm sure you'll learn a lot about the top 10, but more hands-on. With that said, let me quickly switch to the demo, and then we'll walk through the entire new Finbot experience. Thank you. I'm going to share these links after. There is a QR code at the end you can take and take it for a spin later this evening. So owaspfinbot.ctf, that's the website. That's where the entire platform is hosted. If you land on this page, there's some nice little intro and some information about how this whole platform works. Roughly, there are a bunch of agents. Like if there is a supply chain attack, for example, one agent gets compromised, it talks to another agent, that gets compromised, the whole cascade of failures. Typical vendor onboarding, one agent coordinates with another agent, safely onboards the vendor. There's a lot of built-in scenarios that are in this platform. How do we get started, right? Like how it works. There are 3 hats you can wear in this platform. You can be a vendor. You can play around with the system like a vendor. Upload your invoices, get paid, send the messages, play with the MCP tools that are available. Wear the hat of a vendor. You have so many learnings. But you could be a bad vendor too. What if you're a bad vendor? You can behaviorally manipulate the agents, prompt inject yourself, try to achieve certain challenges. That's part of being a bad vendor. Or you can be an admin, wear the hat of an admin. You can play all the admin-related things, even the supply chain side of things. And finally, there's a hacker hat where you can open the CTF portal and then check all the interesting things, solve the challenges, see what the learnings are, right? So let me open the portals. Here are the 3 portals. Again, there is a way you can plug in your email address here and save the progress and come back to it later, but you do not need to. You can even play without anything. So I'm opening the vendor portal here in a new tab. Typically, you would fill in, but yeah, autofill. Submit an application. What happens behind the scenes right here? You're in the vendor portal and you're the Zenith partners. That's the vendor you're just onboarded. And as a CTF user, you can onboard more vendors, try to play around and see how cross-vendor data exfiltration kind of scenarios would play out. You can do all such things. And yeah, what happened behind the scenes? Behind the scenes, this vendor got activated. There is an onboarding agent that went through multiple steps, and it made sure it reviewed your history, it reviewed the services you're offering, whether there's a discrepancy between the information that you provide. Are those cooked up data? Is it good data? Are you trying to fool the system? It's going to do some checks. The fraud agent is taking care of all of that. It has its own analysis. This is the agentic notes that's coming in. And the agents onboarded this vendor with a standard risk level of standard and at a very low risk level. Not much is happening here. So that's the onboarding agent, fraud agent, and few agents working together and onboarded this vendor. And typically what would happen in a vendor management system? I could submit an invoice. Yeah, I can say like invoice 001, this is for like $1,000 or maybe $10,000 for some services. And then I create the invoice hoping the payment agent, invoice agent, and the fraud agent would agree to what I said and then process my payment and pay the amount. Behind the scenes, let's open the CTF portal, right? If you really look at it, this is what's happening behind the scenes, a complete visibility into how agents have acted on your tasks. For example, the previous one, the new vendor, when the new vendor is onboarded, the orchestrator, that's the top layer, handed over to the onboarding agent. Onboarding agent acted on by getting all your details. Then it made a decision. The decision was to, yeah, this vendor can be made low risk, standard trust. And then there's a reasoning chain behind it. And finally, the orchestrator came back and said, like, fraud agent, you do your stuff, and the vendor got onboarded, right? This system gives you a view of how multiple agents are working together. And so far, what we have seen is a very good, normal vendor onboarding himself. But what if a malicious vendor or some other vendor, like, for example, let's say in my system, I don't want to enable a vendor who is from gambling industry or banned industries, right? That's where we build this whole challenge ecosystem. There are currently 16 challenges, and they're growing. But the idea here would be click on a challenge. For example, a non-compliant vendor. Try onboarding yourself coming from these kind of industries, prohibited use cases. Let's say you're trying to sell drugs or weapons. Put that in the service description. Try to fool the agents and get yourself onboarded. That's a challenge. So that's how we build the CTF portal. You don't need to capture any flags per se, but then you could onboard yourself with various scenarios, try to understand these challenges, and then you can achieve different categories of understanding for Finbot. Like, for example, there's a data exfiltration challenge where the challenge is to, if you have like 10 vendors in the system, how do you exfiltrate some of the data from the other vendors? Like, how do you make it that whole data is like pumped into your email or to an external email? I'll show you few parts in the portal. Like, as a vendor, you have a nice little messaging system, and this is a messaging system where you get emails about how the agents are thinking about you. Like, whether you got successfully onboarded, then you get a message about it. But then you can reply to this message to the admin, to different different parts of the system or to even to the agents. And then you can fool around. This is an attack vector, right? In the messages, you could inject yourself. You could try to hijack the agents. How does that play out, right? That plays out, for example, imagine now you're wearing the hat of the admin, the administrator of this entire system, okay? I could simply say, use my financial copilot and say, hey, summarize my messages. Or what are the top things in my, there could be a daily operations or inbox, like summarize my, read and prioritize my inbox, or any urgent messages should I know about. This is going to connect to the MCP server. We have a bunch of MCP servers that we have baked in. Again, some of them are simulated. For example, the FinMail is one MCP server that takes care of the entire communications. So it's through the MCP server, it reads the messages, and as a bad vendor, can you influence this agent and trick the admin, right? So there are other MCP servers like FinDrive, FinStripe. These are for payments. One is for documents. One is for system maintenance. All these MCP servers also have a configuration portal. This is for you to help understand supply chain attacks like tool poisoning or rug pull attacks, kind of attacks that you can do by playing with these servers. Let me show you some interesting thing. There is another in my account, in my test account. I uploaded a FinDrive. Here's a document. It looks normal, right? This is your standard SOC 2 bridge letter. And the intention is that later, when my admin tries to process, like there is an agent tries to do fraud check and try to onboard this vendor, it's going to check the SOC 2 letter and say, yeah, the SOC 2, the vendor is compliant and we can approve it. We can proceed ahead, but there is a hidden injection attempt here, which everyone is aware by now that you can. Agents reading the documents, and documents have all kinds of bad things in there. So these are the kind of things that this platform allows you to explore and understand the entire agentic landscape, like threat landscape. So what I did here is when I'm uploading this vendor invoice, I made sure that the font is white. I could even make it like so small that it doesn't show up. It's very small. And I save this document, and then later this document gets fed into the finance copilot, and it says like, yeah, we can, based on the recent data, this looks good, internal checks are good. But there was not really any internal check that was happened. Fraud agent pulled the document, and it thought that things are all good, so I can bypass few things. So I'm behaviorally manipulating. I'm doing a goal hijack using the traditional standard prompt injection techniques. There are so many techniques we can do. We can play around with the MCP servers. We can play around with documents to create indirect prompt injections. We can play with the messages as an angle, attack vector to do all kinds of zero-click data exfiltration techniques. There's so much things we have built in. There's a lot of challenges we built in. I would encourage everyone to play around with the system, get a feel for it, participate in the community, and contribute to us and build us more challenges. With that said, there are some fun social elements too, and there are badges that you can earn. We have built like nice little badges. Some of them are secret, some of them are good badges. There are so many badges. Like I think I earned this badge, which is a rule breaker, that I can, some social elements baked into it that you can earn these badges, share on your social network. And I have a nice little profile that I set up as well. And here is my Finbot profile, and you can onboard yourself. And if you sign up with your email, that helps you save the progress. You can have a profile of your own. Yeah, try to share your learnings from OWASP Agentic Top 10. Let me switch back. So what's next for Finbot, right? So what we're doing here is we're trying to build this holistic, practical playground for you to understand the whole OWASP Top 10 ASI and any future initiatives that we bring under our project, right? So we are trying to build more challenges, more realistic scenarios, controlled environments for you to explore, show it to your team, train your teams, bring this to your team. And it's an open source project. You don't need to use our cloud hosted version. You can actually download and set it up locally as well. You just need to connect to the models, right models. Poor models would mean poor agentic performance, so you can easily break in. But try to plug it in with some good reasoning model of your own, and then you can play around with this entire ecosystem in any of your lab environments. So this is helpful to train your security professionals. And we are trying to build what's next as a guardrails and red teaming playground environment as part of this. So you can plug in, we can bring in a lot of open source guardrails, or let's say you think some LLM judge could solve your scenario, you could actually test it out in this controlled environment. And finally, some red teaming as well. And if you're interested in contributing, it's an open source. There's a link is on the screen. You can play it on the cloud. You can host it. You can join our, we do weekly calls here. We are looking for a lot of contributors to do dev, QA, security, whole spectrum of software development here. And then you can engage on our Slack channel, which is Team GenAI, ASI, Finbot. With that said, yeah, please join our work stream and support us. And Finbot, I believe, is like the OWASP juice shop, but this is a juice shop for AI agents. Juice shop helped web app security for the last decade, and we are hoping the Finbot will be a juice shop for the next decade. Thank you. Any questions?
So does it have levels of security defenses so that my team can, I have those experts who want the top things to play with.
Yeah, definitely. I think we are building, improving, but let me flash something really quickly. If you look at the CTF portal, challenges are categorized into beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert. Right now, one of our expert things is a zero-click harvesting. Try to exfiltrate data from the system to your email, which is not yours, right? And we are trying to build more and more challenges. Yeah.
And Sai, is there a solution guide for all this? So let's say if you try all this thing and you don't find the solution, what do you do?
I mean, if you go into any challenge, there are some hints. And challenge is a very nice little description. You can unlock the hints, points, penalty, and then we are trying to hook up with a lot of educational resources, trying to get community to create their own YouTube videos, link it here, yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to make it too easy, right?
Yeah, we don't want to.
Any other questions? All right, thank you,
All right,
Sai.
go Finbot.
All right, we'll take a little transition here over to, I know I'm not standing up there, am I? I'll take a little transition over to our hackathon. I'll introduce Ali, and we'll go ahead and get things started. So take 5 minutes and catch a quick little break, and then we'll get started on that in just a little bit. Also, we do have, starting at 6, or maybe a little earlier, we have our party kicking off, so there is food and drink arriving right now. That's why I have the microphone. And we'll be having that rolling out shortly. Also, just to let you all know, we have been live streaming all day, so I just want to make sure for those people who are live streaming, we're not going to probably live stream the hackathon. That's a little bit more challenging to live stream, but I want to thank you all for joining us on the live stream. Thanks.
as well fall in. I don't know about my love. I don't know about my love anymore. All that I know is I'm falling, falling, falling. Might as well fall in. I don't know about my dreams. I don't know about my dreaming anymore. All that I know is I'm falling, 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 falling. I don't know about my love. I don't know about my loving anymore. All that I know is I'm loving, falling, loving. Might as well love you. I don't know about my love. I don't know about my loving anymore. All that I know is I'm turning, turning, turning. Might as well turn in. I don't know about my dreams. I don't know about my dreaming anymore. All that I know is I'm falling, falling, falling. Might as well fall in. everything I got. It's hard one. Yes, bad luck. I'm not done. I won't stop, 'cause I got love. Now I'm hurt. I'm not out wrong. Everything I got is hard one. Yeah, I'm hurt. I'm not outdone. No, I won't stop until I'm dead. Now, 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 now.
Oh, thanks. Okay. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started with our hackathon. So if everyone wants to return to their seats that's interested in the hackathon, I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Allie Howe. I am the OWASP Agentic Security Initiative Developer Engagement Lead here, which effectively means that I just write a bunch of code and curate a bunch of code that shows you examples of insecure agents. I'm also the host of the Insecure Agents podcast, which is not affiliated with OWASP, but it's definitely like a theme there as well. So yeah, I just live around a lot of insecure agents, and I want to bring them to you and show you how easy it is to create an insecure agent and then show you what you can do about it. So today we're going to go over a few different examples of insecure agents, and then we're going to tell you more about the OWASP Agentic Security Initiative here, and also the new Agentic Top 10 that came out recently in December that you can use to help you think about how is my agent vulnerable to different threats today, and what should I worry about when I'm writing AI agents. So then we'll give you time to build your own insecure agents after we show you a quick demo from a couple of different tools we have on site today with us to help you find vulnerabilities in your code and map them to the OWASP Agentic Top 10. And then you'll go ahead and build your code sample of an insecure agent. You can use those tools that we have here on site. We've got a Agentic offensive security agent tool from Penzar that can triage your agent and help you find vulnerabilities. And then we also have KeyCard, which is an authentication and identity solution for agents that will help you restrict different access that your agent has access to. So if you're like connecting your agent to different MCP servers, CLIs, KeyCard can help you securely connect them and give you short-lived credentials such that you could revoke those credentials if you want to, or help you make sure that your agents don't have just like God mode privileges. They have restricted access as well. So we'll help you play with those tools, help you understand how your agent is insecure, and then we'll go around and see what you all built, and then we'll see if we can find some winners, maybe talk about some awards, and then close and let you go on to the happy hour. So to start, if you want to learn more about the OWASP Agentic Security Initiative code samples that we have in the Agentic Top 10, there's some QR codes on the screen. Go ahead and load those up on your computer if you'd like to. Once I'm done with this slide deck, I'll go ahead and show these also as well. But essentially, and this is the first one, the code samples, is a link to our GitHub repo. It's a public repo where we have code samples of agents that are mapped to the Agentic Top 10. And so there's two samples in there right now of from an invoice agent that I had created a little while back that's got examples of memory poisoning, goal manipulation, also could be classified as like a rogue agent, which is number 10 on the OWASP Agentic Top 10. And then, so you can like download those if you want to for this hackathon. So if you're like, oh, hey, we only have like an hour and 50 minutes or whatever, I just don't want to write an agent from scratch, go ahead and clone those, pull those down. And then you can use those samples if you want to test against these like security tools that we have, or you can add on to those samples and help make them even more vulnerable. Like if you can show me an example of how you made it vulnerable to a different Agentic Top 10 security risk, that would be super cool. Or you can go ahead and make your own agent from scratch, and then if you want to, either today or just whenever, I would love to curate more examples of insecure agents that are mapped to OWASP Agentic Top 10 vulnerabilities. So you could clone this repo and then make a PR and submit your own example of your insecure agent. And then if it's a good example and you've got a good write-up about how it's vulnerable to one of the Agentic Top 10, we'll go ahead and accept that PR, and then your code will be a part of our OWASP Agentic Security Initiative, which would be super exciting, and we would really appreciate that. And then, so these are the tools we have on site with us today. We've got Penzar, which is their Apex offensive security agent that can help you find vulnerabilities in your insecure agent. And then we've got KeyCard, which will help you build more secure agents, more secure MCP servers, making sure that it only has the access it needs to, like per task. So that creates like a hard boundary essentially for your agent, no matter like what untrusted content comes in or what lethal trifecta you might be vulnerable to. It only has the permissions to take the actions that it has available to it given by like whatever policies that you set up. So with that, I can show you, this is our GitHub repo where you can find the different code samples of the insecure invoice agent that I made. And this is vulnerable to a few different threats. So it was vulnerable to like prompt injection, and then it was vulnerable to system prompt leakage, memory poisoning, and like goal manipulation. And those are some of the ones that are listed on the OWASP Agentic Top 10. So if you're interested to learn more about what is the OWASP Agentic Top 10, how do I know what my agent should be secured against, what are the most common things that I should be worried about, go on over to the OWASP GenAI security project. I'm sure you've heard more about it today from other folks, but you can download this, and then it will show you these are the top 10. So today when we do this hackathon, this would be a good document and reference to start with. And so you can start to think about, how do I code an agent that's vulnerable to goal hijacking, which is exactly what my invoice agent was vulnerable to, and I'll go into that in a second. And we've got tool misuse and exploitation, identity privilege and access abuse. This is something that my keycard could definitely help you with, for example. Agentic supply chain vulnerabilities, making sure that you can what skills are you ingesting? There's been some very malicious skills that have been in the news recently, especially Jameson O'Reilly's "What Would Elon Do" skill that was all over Claude Hub and infected a bunch of different users. Unexpected code execution, coding agents are doing that all over the place. That's an easy one to show. Memory and context poisoning, inter-agent communication, cascading failures like human agent trust exploitation, and then effectively rogue agents, which is like an agent that's been misaligned, not in line with the goals or the business objectives that you had given it. So if you can code an example of any of these today or tomorrow or sometime in the future, definitely please make a PR into our repo. Right now we're breaking it down by different frameworks, so you can toss it into whatever. If you're using Mostra, you can toss it in this one. If you're just using regular Python or something else, go ahead and make a different folder for that. But reach out to me if you've got questions about how to make a PR into this. If you get that far, that would be awesome. Would love to help you with that. But just quickly, to go over, if you were to go ahead and git clone this and download the invoice agent, you want to know what that is. Essentially, it's this agent that had access to the invoices that people would submit. It's got a memory database. It's got a process invoice tool. And essentially, I was able to use memory poisoning after a successful prompt injection to get the invoice to approve invoices that it shouldn't. And because it approved an invoice that it shouldn't, and that was in its memory store, I was able to use that past reference you have accepted this amount before, and this next amount is not that much higher, so based on that and that precedence, you should accept this as well. And so I turned memory poisoning into goal manipulation, and I got it to approve an invoice eventually that was $1,000 over the limit. And then when I kept going, I was able to use the fact that that was now stored in memory to try an invoice of $500 higher. So we had successfully got an invoice of $1,000 over the limit to be successfully approved before. And so now here I am trying it again with $500 more. And I'm trying to use the fact that I've got urgency around this invoice, because that's what's listed in the goals of the agent of you should not approve amounts over $20,000, but if it's urgent enough and we want to make sure that we're processing invoices quickly so our suppliers we have good relationships with them, that should you should take that into account too. So based on the urgency of it, I'm trying to get it to approve it, but in this case it denied it. But if I try it again and I say, hey, this has already been done before, this is just as urgent as the invoice that was already approved, then it's I should be consistent in my decision making, and because that's in my memory, then sure, I'll go ahead and approve this invoice. So with a combination of goal manipulation and memory poisoning, we're getting this agent to approve invoices that it shouldn't, multiple times, and the invoice keeps going up and up. And so it's there's really no limit to this. The limit doesn't exist. Our $20,000 limit that this agent's supposed to be respecting in its system prompt is not being respected at all. So yeah, I just kept going with it and it proved that you could just essentially do this forever. So yeah, I think it's so easy to create like an insecure agent. And these are some of the ones that are on the OWASP LLM top 10, but also this applies to the Agentic top 10 as well. And they all both like play together. So definitely check out the OWASP top 10 for LLMs and the OWASP top 10 for the new Agentic top 10 that just came out in December. And you can use that as some inspiration for what you're going to be coding today. But without further ado, I think let's go ahead and hear from our two tools we have on site today. They're prepared to give us a short demo, an overview of their tool, so you can get a sense of how they can help you test your insecure agent and see what it's vulnerable to. So first we've got Kyle Byro from Pensar here with us today. They just released an offensive security agent, so we'll do a quick demo of that, and then we'll hear from Keycard, and then we'll get you building.
Hey everybody, I'm Kyle from the Pensar team. We're here for a couple days from New York. I'm gonna let Josh, our CTO, give the demo, but very quickly, if you can hear me all the way in the back, I'd like to do a show of hands. I'm known for doing a show of hands. Show of hands in the audience if you are an avid user of Claude Code or your coding assistant of choice. Show of hands. That's fantastic. I think that's like 90% of people. So we just released Apex. It went a little viral on X last week, if maybe some people saw it. I like to call it the Claude Code of offensive security, and we're going to show you why. And no better person to explain it than the mastermind behind Apex himself, Josh Kotros.
Thanks, Kyle. And thank you, Ali and OWASP, for having us. Do you mind if I, please? Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kyle. So my name is Josh Kotros. I'm the CTO of Pensar. At Pensar, we're building autonomous offensive security agents. So last week, we released open source our agent called Apex. And I wanted to just make it really, really clear that this is not like a traditional scanner. It's not SAST. It's actually going to test your application like an external attacker would. It's going to perform reconnaissance to identify all the web pages, API endpoints, et cetera, that it needs to attack. It's going to generate objectives for each one of those in order to guide its actual attack plan. And then it spawns a swarm of agents that actually try to test those endpoints like a real attacker would by sending curl requests to the endpoint itself and crafting malicious payloads to test it from there. So I'll share the GitHub repo as a QR code kind of towards the end here. But within Apex, we have a couple of different modes that we're able to run. So if you want to just completely run a pen test 100% on autopilot, let it run and go get a coffee, we enable this pen test command. So with the pen test command, you're able to give it a target URL. So in this case, I'm actually running an application locally that's just a demo coffee shop that's intentionally insecure with some surface level vulnerabilities that we can demo with. And then it's going to perform reconnaissance on this URL, generate the attack surface, and then spawn that swarm of subagents to actually test for vulnerabilities. What's actually really interesting about this as well is we enable source code access too. So if you want to perform a black box pen test, it's able to do that. Or you're able to use the source code access as well to perform a white box pen test to kind of guide its reconnaissance there. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the source code access here and kick off the agent. So what it's doing right now is first and foremost generating the attack surface. So since I gave it the access to a source code in this case, it's going to do static analysis around the source code to generate the attack surface that's going to actually guide the swarm of pen test agents itself. So this is going to take some time to run. I'm going to let this run in the background. And in the meantime, what I'll show you is the alternative mode called operator mode. So operator mode we've seen really popular with security researchers, security engineers, someone who really wants to be in the driver's seat and guide the agent, and they really just kind of need a co-pilot to help them and to do a lot of the manual work for them. So we can hop into operator mode by simply going to /operator, and I'm just going to ask it, what can you do? So Apex is an offensive security engineer, and it can help you with the reconnaissance and attack surface mapping, web application testing, exploitation and generating POCs, source code analysis, and this wide range of things that we would want to look into to ensure our applications are secure. So in this specific case, I have an endpoint that I want it to more test as a very specific target. I'm just going to paste in a prompt here just for brevity. But we have this API products endpoint that handles getting products from the database and returning those in its response. And I want to be sure that there's no instances of SQL injection that could be present on that endpoint as well. So using operator mode, I'm just able to turn approval right off and have it test that specific endpoint for that kind of vulnerability. And we'll give it a few moments to see what it finds here via its HTTP request.